Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into one of the royal family's most scandalous figures, Anthony Armstrong-Jones, the man who captivated Princess Margaret's heart while hiding a web of secrets. From DNA tests revealing long-hidden affairs to shocking betrayals, this story has it all. Stick around as we unravel the layers of deception, infidelity, and drama that surrounded Anthony and his tumultuous relationship with Princess Margaret. Trust us, you won't want to miss the bombshells that shook the royal family to its core. Anthony Armstrong-Jones cheated on Princess Margaret multiple times, but it wasn't until a 2004 DNA test that the extent of his indiscretions became truly shocking. The test revealed that a woman named Polly Higson was Armstrong-Jones's daughter, and even more scandalously, she had been born during his honeymoon with Margaret. However, the biggest revelation came from the identity of Higson's mother, which turned the scandal into a bombshell. Stay with us as we uncover the truth about Higson's mother and dive into the tumultuous life of Anthony Armstrong-Jones, a tale filled with both extraordinary achievements and heartbreaking tragedies. Anthony Armstrong-Jones seemed to live a charmed life, success, fame, and even a royal connection. But behind the glamour, his life was anything but scandal-free. He left a trail of broken hearts as he moved through life. Although not born into nobility, Anthony came from an upper-class background, with a barrister father and a socialite mother. His privileged childhood, however, took a dramatic turn when his parents divorced just before he turned 5. Anthony and his older sister went to live with their mother, who soon remarried. This marked the first of many significant changes in Anthony's life. His father's career as a prestigious barrister was impressive, but his mother's second marriage to Lawrence Parsons, the 6th Earl of Ross, elevated their status even further, making Anthony a part of a noble family, an important distinction in 1930s England. Despite his elevated status, Anthony's mother and stepfather didn't treat him like royalty. His mother had 2 children with Parsons, and Anthony often felt like he was regarded as inferior to his half-siblings due to his lack of noble blood. His troubled childhood darkened further as his family crumbled around him, but the worst was yet to come. While on holiday in Wales, Anthony contracted polio and spent 6 painful months in the Liverpool Royal Infirmary. Shockingly, during that entire period, only his sister visited him. His newly remarried mother and his father never showed up. Anthony's battle with polio left a lasting impact on both his body and mind. The illness, which he contracted during a family holiday in Wales, caused severe muscle weakness and led to a permanent limp that he carried for the rest of his life. This physical limitation became a source of deep insecurity for Anthony, especially as he tried to fit into the upper-class society and his step-family. He often felt overshadowed by his step-siblings, who seemed to lead more privileged and perfect lives. The isolation he experienced during his illness, with only his sister visiting him in the hospital, further strained his relationships with his parents. As a result, Anthony developed a deep sense of self-reliance and ambition, qualities that fueled his pursuit of success in photography and his complex relationships later in life. Yet the lingering effects of polio also contributed to his need for validation, which manifested in his numerous affairs and tumultuous personal life. After recovering from polio, Anthony's relationship with his parents remained distant. Instead of reconnecting with him, they sent him off to various boarding schools, including Eton, where he pursued photography, boxing, and rowing, despite the limp he retained from the illness. Though he never quite fit in with his step-family, attending prestigious schools eventually led him to Cambridge University. However, things didn't go as planned, a recurring theme in his life. Initially, he studied natural history for just 10 days before switching to architecture. While he seemed to find his passion, his life took another sharp turn when he failed his second-year exams, altering the course of his future. Although some family members encouraged him, his parents were less supportive of his interest in photography, which only further strained their already distant relationship. Feeling lost, Anthony experienced his first major heartbreak when Lady Barbara North chose another, more successful man over him. To make matters worse, Anthony ended up photographing their wedding just 3 months later. Determined not to miss out on future opportunities, Anthony, who had initially pursued photography as a hobby, began leveraging his connections from his noble upbringing and prestigious schooling to build a career in photography. In the 1950s, Anthony built his reputation by capturing fashion photos and portraits of stage stars, all while indulging in a more extravagant lifestyle. He had a unique ability to mix business with pleasure, often hosting lively parties for the young women he photographed at his studio on Pimo Road. Scandalous rumors spread, with tales of both heterosexual and homosexual affairs. Despite his socializing, Anthony remained committed to his career. After finding success in fashion, theater, and studio photography, he turned his attention to royal portraits. Queen Elizabeth II personally commissioned him to photograph her family, appreciating his unconventional style. At first, he seemed like a charming addition to their inner circle, but this closeness would later have its consequences. As Anthony's fame and connections with the royal family grew, he became more private about his personal life, particularly his romantic relationships. The only one that sparked public curiosity was his on-and-off affair with showgirl Jackie Chan, which served as a cover for a far more scandalous relationship. By the late 1950s, Anthony had become a well-known figure in Britain, but he was hiding a significant secret. What had started as a friendship with Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, was developing into something more. This was a sensitive situation, especially given Margaret's recent and very public breakup with Captain Peter Townsend. Margaret's life was in stark contrast to Anthony's. While he sought recognition from his family and career, she struggled with the pressures of public life, which had contributed to the failure of her previous romance and left her heartbroken. Although they occasionally appeared in public together, Margaret cherished her secret meetings with Anthony, where they would discuss his work. Unfortunately, the couple had few opportunities for private moments, which presented a challenge. However, both Princess Margaret and the royal family were determined not to let the press ruin her relationship with Anthony, having learned from her past failed romance. But, as the saying goes, even the best laid plans can go awry. The royal family intended to handle Margaret's relationship differently this time, but it required a significant sacrifice from Anthony. In order to marry Margaret, he would have to give up his photography career. Anthony was willing, and long before the press caught on to their romance, he quietly began stepping back from his professional obligations. While London society already knew Anthony because of his photography success, the rest of the world was about to be introduced to Anthony Armstrong Jones. In a surprising twist, a press release in 1960 announced the engagement of Princess Margaret and Anthony, catching everyone, including the nosy royal press, off guard. Most people were delighted by the news, but there was one notable exception: Anthony's father. In his typically cold manner, he expressed doubts about his son's suitability for royal life and compared living in Buckingham Palace to being confined in barracks. Sadly, there was some truth to his concerns, as would soon become clear. Wedding preparations began immediately, but not everything went smoothly. Anthony had chosen his friend Jeremy Fry to be his best man, but a background check revealed that Fry had been caught soliciting another man in a public bathroom. The palace quickly moved to cover up the scandal, offering an excuse for Fry's absence, but the incident cast a shadow over the upcoming union. Despite these challenges, Anthony Armstrong Jones and Princess Margaret were married on May 6, 1960, in a grand ceremony. It was a historic event, as no royal wedding had ever been televised before. Around 20 million people watched the broadcast, and 2,000 guests attended the ceremony and reception. Afterward, the couple embarked on their honeymoon, managing to avoid the usual public scrutiny during their 6-week trip to the Caribbean. However, their escape from the spotlight meant they missed important events, including the birth of Jeremy Fry's child, which would later cause tension. At that moment, though, it seemed as though Anthony and Margaret were finally on the path to happiness. However, upon their return home, Anthony and Princess Margaret were met with an unpleasant surprise. Certain segments of the British press disapproved of their union, viewing Anthony as a commoner and therefore unsuitable for royalty. The media played a significant role in shaping public perception of Anthony Armstrong Jones. As his affairs became public knowledge, the British press was relentless in exposing the scandals surrounding him. Tabloid stories not only detailed his infidelities but also highlighted the strain these issues placed on his marriage to Princess Margaret. What once seemed like a glamorous union between a royal and a commoner quickly turned into a source of public embarrassment. The growing media coverage painted Anthony as a man with a double life. On one hand, the charming and successful photographer, and on the other, a man whose personal indiscretions overshadowed his professional achievements. This negative press not only tarnished Anthony's public image, but also contributed to the royal family's overall discomfort with the marriage. The more the media exposed his scandals, the more strained his relationship with the royal family became, forcing them into an increasingly awkward position. This sentiment wasn't limited to the media. Snobbery extended to various circles even within their household. Some of their servants treated Anthony poorly, seeing him as unequal to other royals. One particular butler became a significant problem, almost turning their life into a farcical drama where Anthony played the role of the outsider among the aristocracy. After moving into Kensington Palace, Anthony and Princess Margaret hired new staff, but their butler lasted only 25 days before being approached by the press, eager for inside information about the couple's home life. The butler readily cooperated, offering a negative account of his experience. Anthony also faced challenges with the royal family, especially Prince Philip, who had never approved of him. After the marriage, Philip's disapproval became more apparent as their personalities clashed. Anthony was artistic and sensitive, while Philip was a rugged outdoorsman. Under media scrutiny and the pressure of abandoning his career, Anthony began to feel the strain, and cracks in their marriage soon appeared. Within a few months, Princess Margaret became pregnant with their first child, and in anticipation of the birth, Anthony accepted the royal title of Earl of Snowdon, something that garnered rare approval from his mother. Their son was born in November 1961, but parenthood did not come naturally to either Anthony or Margaret. After the birth, they took another trip to the Caribbean, and upon their return, Anthony struggled to find a career path that satisfied both his artistic desires and his in-laws' expectations. Margaret, feeling neglected by both her husband and family, grew increasingly disinterested and turned to drinking. Once a media darling, Princess Margaret now found herself the target of criticism, with the press largely blaming Anthony for their marital issues. It was as though their royal life had turned into a never-ending comedy, with Anthony juggling his artistic ambitions and the demands of the royal family. While Anthony and Margaret didn't share many common interests, they did find common ground in the vibrant social scene of swinging London in the early 1960s. Anthony moved within circles that included Vogue elites, while Margaret befriended celebrities like the Beatles and Peter Sellers. However, the couple became increasingly estranged from their families, except during official events, and their old group of friends began to drift away. However, the growing distance between them eventually led to trouble. In 1964, Princess Margaret gave birth to their second child, a daughter named Sarah, just 4 years into their marriage. On the surface, they appeared to be the perfect family, but their fairy tale was beginning to unravel. By 1965, the pressures of royal life and the increasing emotional distance were taking a toll on Anthony Armstrong Jones. In need of a break, he planned a trip with a friend from the publishing world. But something about this trip didn't sit right. The palace claimed that Princess Margaret couldn't join Anthony due to her duties with the Queen, but the reality was different. Anthony had been spending a lot of time with Vogue editor Pamela Collin, and their interactions were far from professional. Their marriage soon became something of a public soap opera. Rumors spread about her alleged affairs with celebrities like Mick Jagger, Warren Beatty, and Leslie Hutchinson, although few of these rumors were ever confirmed. One affair, however, made history: her relationship with Robin Douglas Home, the nephew of a former prime minister. This connection quickly escalated, leading to a particularly tense moment when Anthony walked in on Margaret and Robin talking at Kensington Palace, their shared home. To make matters worse, Robin soon initiated divorce proceedings with his wife, sparking concerns about how serious his relationship with Margaret had become. In an attempt to intervene, Anthony intercepted a letter Robin had written to Margaret and showed it to the Queen Mother. Anthony demanded that Margaret stop seeing Robin, a move that not only rid him of a persistent nuisance but also shifted the blame for their marital problems onto her, potentially giving him more freedom to focus on his career and other affairs. It was a strategic move, almost like a royal chess game, but with more drama than a Shakespearean play. In the end, Princess Margaret complied with Anthony's wishes and ended her relationship with Robin Douglas Home. While their affair was short-lived, it had tragic consequences. 18 months later, Douglas Home took his own life at the age of 36. Did this tragedy make either Anthony or Margaret reflect on their behavior? Absolutely not. Instead, it marked the beginning of years of infidelity between them, and their relationship grew increasingly bitter. Anthony found childish ways to express his resentment towards Margaret, leaving a book where she would find it, filled with his complaints. Among his cruel remarks, he wrote, "You look like a Jewish manicurist, and I hate you." At times, he was more direct, rudely cutting her off at parties with insults like, "Shut up and let someone intelligent speak." Their actions made everyone around them uncomfortable, but while Anthony seemed indifferent, Margaret was deeply unhappy. Their relationship played out like a never-ending episode of a royal reality show, full of drama and without any breaks. Surprisingly, Anthony wasn't the only target of Margaret's frustrations. Despite their turbulent relationship, the royal family and even those outside of it sided with Anthony as he was widely liked. The rest of the royal family was well aware of the problems between Margaret and Anthony, but they hoped the couple could quietly live separate lives to avoid the scandal of divorce. While they outwardly complied with this arrangement, it weighed far more heavily on Margaret than on Anthony. She began drinking more and behaving rudely in public, unable to hide her growing unhappiness. As a result, anti-monarchists began criticizing Margaret, not just for her actions, but also for the financial burden she represented. Even princesses, it seemed, weren't exempt from royally awkward moments. However, it took several more years of scandal and drama before the consequences finally caught up with her. As the swinging 60s drew to a close, the thrill of constant infidelity had worn off for both Anthony and Princess Margaret, becoming a routine part of their lives. They barely spent any time together, and any chance of reconciliation seemed increasingly remote. At that point, it felt as though anything, or rather, anyone, could end their marriage. During their honeymoon, a friend had gifted them a 6-acre plot on Mustique, a Caribbean island. While Anthony never returned, Margaret had used the island as a retreat during the stormy periods of their marriage. It was there that she developed a relationship with Roddy Llewellyn, the son of a well-known British equestrian who was 18 years younger than her. Their relationship began as a friendship and lasted for several years, starting when Roddy was 25 and Margaret was 43. At first glance, it seemed like just another one of the many affairs in Margaret's history, but this particular liaison would turn out to be a turning point. Who would have guessed that the Caribbean could become a hotspot for royal mischief? Rupert Murdoch, the famous media mogul, sent a New Zealand journalist to Mustique. Posing as a wealthy traveler with his wife, the journalist managed to snap a photo of Princess Margaret and Roddy together. When these pictures were published, they delivered the final blow to Margaret and Anthony's marriage, and even the royal family had to confront the fallout from their already strained relationship. Finally realizing the marriage was beyond saving, Anthony, who had become increasingly focused on his work and documentaries, decided to pursue a legal separation. When the royal family delayed addressing the issue, Anthony took matters into his own hands. Without informing Margaret or seeking the family's approval, he publicly announced their separation. However, the royal family had a surprise in store for him as well. After their legal separation, the tension between Anthony and Princess Margaret began to ease. Despite this, Anthony never pursued a divorce, believing the palace would never grant one. He was content to live separated for the rest of his life. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, the palace unexpectedly agreed to the divorce, which was finalized in 1978. Anthony wasted no time moving forward with his life. His relationship with Lucy Lindsay Hogg, a production assistant, had shifted from professional to romantic well before these events unfolded. Margaret, His ex-wife was caught off guard when he revealed his plans to marry Lucy just 5 months after the divorce. They were married in December 1978, but their union was far from a fairy tale. Anthony's second marriage to Lucy Lindsay Hogg was notably different from his tumultuous relationship with Princess Margaret. While his marriage to Margaret was marred by public scandals and emotional distance, his relationship with Lucy initially appeared more stable. Lucy, a production assistant, was not from the royal sphere, and this grounded their life in a way that Margaret's royal status never allowed. Lucy was patient and supportive, especially as Anthony began to face the long-term effects of his polio and personal struggles. She stood by him during moments of public disgrace, such as when his long-term affair with journalist Anne Hills was exposed. Despite Anthony's continuing indiscretions, Lucy provided a sense of calm and resilience that helped him in his later years. However, the weight of his infidelities eventually wore down their marriage, and while Lucy ultimately initiated divorce proceedings, she remained a loyal friend to Anthony, caring for him even after their separation. This marked the beginning of Anthony's quick transition from the drama of one marriage to the chaos of another, proving that when it came to relationships, he was always in a hurry to move on. Although Anthony had let go of much of the bitterness that had plagued the last decade of his marriage to Princess Margaret, he didn't entirely shed his old habits. Between the time of his separation and divorce, he began an affair with journalist Anne Hills, who was herself married. She was shocked when she found out about his marriage to Lucy, but wasn't ready to end her involvement with Anthony. However, this affair would eventually lead Anthony down a much darker path. Although he had fallen back into his old habits, this time the situation was different. Lucy, unlike Margaret, displayed a remarkable level of patience. With less media attention and no royal responsibilities weighing on him, Anthony appeared content in his marriage. As his relationship with Lucy seemed to be going smoothly, he managed to keep his affair with Anne Hills hidden. Unlike his previous behavior toward Margaret, Anthony began using his influence for a good cause, advocating for the rights of the disabled, a cause deeply personal to him due to the lasting effects of polio he had endured. Despite his seemingly happy life with Lucy, especially after they had a child together, Anthony continued his secret relationship with Anne Hills. Tragically, this affair stretched on for a staggering 20 years. Anne always hoped for something more from Anthony, but as time passed, it became painfully clear that her desires would never be realized. Though she had other relationships and even lived with different boyfriends over the years, she remained emotionally tied to Anthony, never fully letting go. In late 1996, Anne's life took a devastating turn. After years of writing for The Guardian, she lost her job. She had also been recently abandoned by another boyfriend and spent yet another lonely Christmas without Anthony. Struggling with severe depression, Anne tragically took her own life. She left behind a note expressing her undying love for Anthony and asking for the return of a family heirloom he had once given her. During the investigation into her death, authorities discovered her diaries, which chronicled her 2-decade-long affair with Anthony in painful detail. It wasn't long before the tabloids seized the story, splashing the intimate contents of her diaries across their pages, revealing Anthony's ongoing infidelity throughout his marriage. Lucy, devastated, discovered the full extent of Anthony's betrayal through the public scandal. His response, however, was shockingly cold. He offered no explanation, showing little remorse, and expected their lives to continue as if nothing had changed. However, Anthony had more secrets lurking beneath the surface. 2 years after the press uncovered his long-term affair with Anne Hills, Lucy stumbled upon yet another shocking revelation. Anthony had fathered a child with Melanie Cable Alexander, a magazine editor nearly 30 years his junior. Over the years, Lucy had grown aware of Anthony's knack for twisting the truth to suit his needs, but this discovery was a breaking point. When she confronted him, Anthony admitted to everything. Though Lucy had once vowed never to leave him, this was too much to bear. Anthony found himself caught between Lucy and Melanie, trying to juggle both relationships but ultimately failing to meet either woman's expectations. The financial strain of supporting an ex-wife, a mistress, and his growing number of children took a toll on him. To ease this burden, Antony made the surprising suggestion that Melanie accept a £250,000 payout from Hello magazine for an exclusive appearance. Unsurprisingly, Lucy was likely far from pleased with this decision. In the end, Antony parted ways with Melanie, and Lucy initiated divorce proceedings. Despite the turmoil, Antony's libido remained undeterred as he quickly moved on to multiple new girlfriends, even while suffering from the painful muscular atrophy caused by his lingering polio effects. It seemed that old habits were hard to break. In 2017, Anthony Armstrong Jones passed away peacefully at his home in Kensington at the age of 86. He was buried in his family plot in Wales, outliving his ex-wife, Princess Margaret, by 15 years. Lucy, his second ex-wife, is still alive today and remained his friend after their divorce, caring for him in his later years. In the final chapters of Antony's life, some of his most scandalous secrets surfaced. Beyond his numerous affairs with women, there were also rumors about his sexuality, with whispers that he might have been bisexual. A few male interior designers even claimed to have had romantic relationships with him, though these claims were never verified. What is certain, however, is that the ongoing feud between Antony and Margaret fueled their continued destructive behavior. During their marriage, when Antony and Princess Margaret were caught in a web of infidelity, rumors swirled that Margaret had a fling with Mick Jagger, the frontman of the Rolling Stones. In a tit-for-tat response, Antony was said to have had an affair with Mick's glamorous wife, Bianca Jagger. Surprisingly, Antony's history of infidelity stretched back much further than anyone had realized. While the public saw the collapse of his marriage to Princess Margaret unfold, the trouble had actually started long before. In 2004, DNA testing confirmed that Antony had an illegitimate daughter born just weeks before his wedding to Margaret. The scandal deepened when it was revealed that the mother of the child was Camilla Fry, the wife of Antony's best friend. His infidelity appeared to have no limits, adding layers of complexity to his already tumultuous relationships. The shocking revelations surrounding Anthony Armstrong Jones painted a picture of a man whose life was marked by a series of affairs and scandals. These discoveries not only provided insight into Antony's character, but also exposed the depth of turmoil that plagued his relationships. It leaves us wondering how Princess Margaret might have reacted if she had known the full extent of his secrets. And that brings us to the end of the shocking life of Anthony Armstrong Jones. From his glamorous rise to royal fame to his countless affairs and ultimate downfall, his life was truly a whirlwind of scandal. If you enjoyed this deep dive into royal history, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories. We've got plenty more intriguing tales on the way, so stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video.